Good morning, good morning. I'm Miss Daisy today. John Boy is driving Miss Daisy. We got to go get some parts for the log hoist, I think you'd call it, our log turning system. I've got this Logrite hook here. Get you a good shot. Logrite hook that we're going to use to turn logs, and we need the hardware that will go into that hole right there and work with a strap and our hoist so we can turn logs. And then we're going to try it out today. That's the goal. We also have our Bissell Maple Farm Company picnic, and I'm looking forward to that. So maybe at the end I'll throw in a little montage with some folks from Bissell Maple Farm having a good time around the campfire. So thanks for stopping by. Catch you at the end. Favorite place. 6,400 pound lifting swing. We'll grab a couple of these. So here's an 8-foot 2x4 right here. Conventional lumber. And it is in bulk. If you buy 100, it's $4.19. Okay, we got our Logrite hook, Shackle and Clevis, and we'll use these straps because they're a lot lighter to deal with than chains. So, little movie magic. There you have it. So, hook this guy up. Yeah, I should have bought a few of these. So there you go. Okay, so these log decks Austin made are 6x6s, and they're quite impressive. He actually put a lot of time and thought into them. Jonathan and I are using our bridge crane and our VEVOR hoist to move it over because it is literally that heavy. Just put a 2x4 through the supports there, and we were able to move it over. You can see Austin's log deck was meant to handle some pretty heavy-duty lumber. We call that his drawbridge. I tease him and say, "You need a moat and some gaiters now, Austin." The log decks were also built to help us when we start doing some timber framing. Even independently, you can use them for smaller logs or a project, almost like a workbench. This is a George log. Middlefield Custom Sawmill. This is all yours, buddy. Sheesh. Austin really stacked these logs up for me, didn't he? It's a little tricky when you get this high. I think Jacob did a pretty good job making it look like I'm halfway decent with this grapple. But it is getting dangerous, so we're gonna have to do something different. That's a pretty heavy log right there. About 4,000 pounds. So this is the one we actually want to cut. We'll get all the 2x4s we need out of this one. So I actually want to get it over and above these. So we're gonna have to roll these logs down the log deck this way, so I can just set the big one on the other side. Do you understand what I'm saying? Austin actually had to trim a little bit off that log in order to get it to fit on our sawmill. So initially we were going to lift and put the big log up over these. We have a 2x4 order we needed to get done. It was 12 8-foot 2x4s, and instead of using the big log, we just decided to use the second largest log there on the log deck because we could get all the 2x4s we needed for the order. That's why you saw the pricing at the beginning. This is dimensional or nominal 2x4s, which means 1.5 inch by 3.5 inches, which I incorrectly stated as 1.5 by 3 inches while we were building the sawmill shed. So all of our purlins are not quite dimensional, but that's okay. You live and you learn. So here George is helping us come up with a plan. George has a lot more experience milling than we do. He's pretty knowledgeable, and he kind of has a plan to attack. Everybody has a different plan of attack when they're milling. Austin and I have one, George has one. Nothing's right or wrong, it's just different. And I try to learn something from anyone who has more experience milling than I do. One thing I have learned from George is take smaller pieces off so you're not carrying something so heavy. And yeah, you're going to wear your blade down a little bit more, but who cares? It's better than getting a hernia. So this is flitch. Flitch is, basically has bark on two sides. We end up making a flitch pile, which eventually we have to turn into lumber. And it's kind of annoying, but it's just part of it. Now the whole point of this episode is to show you how we can use the chain fall or hoist to rotate a log. And George has a lot of experience rotating a log with straps, so I'm glad he's here today helping us with this. It's also helpful having a young guy like Jonathan. Many hands make light work, especially when it's young. So this is the idea is, this log is definitely, we could absolutely use a cant hook for this log, but this was our first test to make sure, we had a good feeling it would work, but we wanted to test it on this log here. So George is that's our homemade toe board to, when you have a smaller diameter on one end and a larger diameter on the other end of the log, you actually want to lift that smaller one up so you'll get more meat off the cut. Well, less meat off the cut. You'll get more lumber out of the log, I should say. If you use the toe board on your first two cuts, so if you use it on one cut and then rotate 90 degrees, you can be done with the toe board. Now, George is clever here. He asked me to go get a tool. I'm starting to understand George's method here. I was going to get a tool to cut the end of the log so the mill could pass through. There wasn't enough clearance in the throat of the mill. And George says, "Hey Nate, can you go get a saw?" By the time I get back, George already, Jonathan and George were able to pull the blade out, cut that piece off, and almost finish the cut with a cant hook. Cant hook is plenty for a log this size. We like to use PVC to rotate against instead of the sharper side of the log stops. Sometimes the log stops will dig into the lumber, but if you use a piece of 2-inch PVC, it's actually quite slippery against the log when you rotate it. Another little piece off there, just barely cleared. Sometimes you get lucky, or you accidentally make the right decision. Doesn't mean you're good, it just means you're accidentally right. We gotta cut the last slab off and we'll have a cant here. This is where George notices there's a lot of play in the mill, and you'll see there is some shims at the top and bottom of that green square tube. And the shims have come loose over time, probably from wear of going up and down. It's got about 50 hours in the mill. There was a lot more play than I was actually kind of surprised. So George noticed it, and we basically loosened the bolts and pulled the shims in around the galvanized square stock that it slides up and down on. And that allows us to keep the mill head from moving, and it makes prevents the blade from diving or moving up. You want to keep that blade completely parallel to the sawmill deck. You don't want it to move, so if this mill head has any play, the blade can actually dip or go up and down. And you'll see later in the video that it has a very nice plane it cuts on a very nice plane because we were able to tighten these down. So do the old shimmy shake and see what you think.
Yeah, it's not shaking now.
It looks like we got her tight. I might have. You want to check all four, You want to check this one for me?
That's not tight.
A little too tight?
I don't know. It's not too bad.
Yeah, a couple times up and down. That one still seems a little loose. This one here.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
A touch, but...
Oh, that's because that's not tight.
Huh, that would explain why.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me get that guy in.
All right.
Got it squeezed in?
Almost. Yeah, this isn't even in there yet. I never tightened this one down. All right, see if I can. That's about what I can do. Look at that.
So I like running the mill with Jonathan. He's learning a lot. He is fascinated with the idea that you can take a log that was, you know, trash from a tree service company and turn it into sellable goods. All the logs you see behind the tractor there are from Brobst Tree Service, and these are trees that would have been landfilled or turned into chips. I'm not really sure, but Jonathan is fascinated that we can take a product that was a byproduct or trash and turn it into sellable goods. So I think we're going to sell these 2x4s for like $2 a piece. So George is helping us here figure out how to mill the 2x4s in the most efficient way. And he definitely has. He thinks differently, which is helpful. I like that shot of Jonathan dumping Phil's sawdust. We appreciate working with Phil. He has horses, and glad that there's a place for that sawdust to go. We just need to remember to close the lid before it rains. So all of those boards are 1.5 inches thick, and we're going to cut them down 3.5 inches at a time. I think George explains it here.
All right, so he cut them all. We stood them up on end. We got to do a cut here and a cut here to make 2x4s and a sticker at the top. I'll show you from this end, it looks better. There you go, you can see them all there.
So I think this first cut's just going to be stickers. George has the math figured out faster than we do.
Well, the decks didn't fall apart yet. So
No, we moved them though. Jonathan and I moved them with the crane.
Where'd you, what?
We just moved them so it wasn't so close to the mill.
The thing still
We
reach?
moved this one down. There was so much room in the end. I just moved.
Yeah, but when you flip them down, they tip the mill over.
Really?
What George is telling you is your drawbridge is heavy.
It's almost like it needs a couple legs on there.
Yeah.
I know, I was looking at that going, you could have used one of those pieces of wood.
Well, so the idea was, which I may still do if it tips the mill, to use a true 2x4 here to. Oh, you're just okay. My idea was to put a true 2x in here and bolt it in so that it would just free swing, and when you tip it down, you'd have legs for extra support.
Still, you only need 2 of those then.
Yeah,
Well, there's
but
he had reasons. Give him your
there's a
reasons.
lot.
I just used 2 on each side because I could put 2 legs in and just bolt through these.
George, we have a crane. We can lift
I
that
figured
thing.
the whole thing's been overkill. Why stop at this point?
That makes sense. Okay, that I
Now
understand.
George is on board.
He gets it.
Austin has a good idea there, putting legs on those drawbridges. You can see how straight that cut is now without the mill head moving. The blade isn't diving and the blade isn't going up and down. So here Austin's lifting this huge log. I joked with Austin and said, why don't you do the drop test? I think it would handle it, to be honest. Now, the interesting thing is the whole point of the hoist is so we don't have to use the cant hook. And we struggled a little bit with the cant hook, and then we're like, hey, we got a hoist here. Cant hooks are certainly handy, but some logs are just a little beyond a cant hook. So we're going back to the hoist. The 6-foot strap isn't quite long enough to get around the log, so I actually have an antique log dog that I bought off eBay that we use to bridge the gap here. It's painted red. The Logrite cant hook hardly does any damage. It mostly just goes into the bark. It's a good angle. I've used a lot of different cant hooks, and the Logrite, the angle of the hook and just how it functions is superior to some off-brand. At some point, we're going to figure out how to power the bridge crane. We're testing out some trolleys that are powered, and so far we haven't found anything that we really liked. Most industrial things, or most industrial equipment is, 460 volt, some high voltage, which we don't have here. No fossil fuels are needed to run this chain fall and hoist. It's Austin powered, so it is a green solution. Also pretty handy when you don't have power in your mill shed. And I think we determined here that because it's sitting on the knobs that we want to rotate it to a side of the log that doesn't have a bunch of knobs and knots. It was kind of handy having George here. His experience with straps and rotating logs with his skid steer has definitely come in handy to help us. The hoist and crane system is just a lower cost solution than a skid steer. Again, we use the PVC pipes just to take the friction out and also prevent the log stops from digging into the bark, which is really frustrating when you have a cant hook. Love this shot. Wish I would have gotten more of the log, but you get a good shot of how this hoist actually works, or how the chain drive, and then you can see that there's a double chain pulley, which gives it extra power, but also makes it half as fast. The more wrap you have on the log, the better it works. I will say that log really just kind of stays in place. It rotates right in place. I like what Austin does here. He just sticks that cant hook right there, and it slides right out of the way. You can see, this is one of my favorite shots. You can see that we just take a little bit off there. Make the slab a little lighter. This is a George influence, and he's right. A little slab, just make it extra cut, it's a little safer. Yeah, you're gonna wear your blade, but Austin is so good at sharpening blades that the blades that Austin sharpens are actually, they perform better than brand new ones out of the box. We rotated the log just to get these knobs. You can see how many there were. It's hard to set something down on knobs and keep it flat. It was a year ago this time that we were building this mill shed. If you want to go back and watch those episodes, they were really well done and informational and quite entertaining, if I do say so myself. You can see our RPMs there running about 3,900, 3,850. That's where we like to run for the best performance. We did juice the engine up. I learned this from Hobby Hardwoods, Alabama. You need to watch the discharge of the sawdust off your blade to know how your blade is performing. The way the sawdust comes off, it should come off in a straight line. But if you are starting to see sawdust shoot up or down from the blade, then that means you probably have some teeth out and it's just time to change blades or just watch it. But when Austin sharpens a blade, that sawdust shoots straight across. So you want to watch the rooster tail, and if it's shooting above the blade or below the blade, there's definitely an issue with the set of the teeth. If you're thinking about getting a sawmill, it is way more fun than you think it is, I have to say. But it's also way more work than I thought it would be. It's satisfying, and it's really fun to be able to just make something. So if you'll notice, we throw the hook on there the wrong way, and George points it out. You want to rotate it towards your log stops instead of towards the individual standing in harm's way should it roll. George notices it right here and says, "Hey guys, throw it the other way around," and he was right. Again, so nice having George there to help us. I'm glad that he's my friend. So this is a good time to let you know that Austin and I like to rotate the log 180 degrees all the way over. So we know we at least have 2 flat cuts. Yes, you can rotate it 90 degrees. This is where we have the debate right here. And we joke with them and say, listen, man, we don't want 4 sides that are not square to each other. At least we know we'll have 2 if we go 180 degrees. That's if we leave nothing on the log bunk. If you're new to milling, if there's anything on the log bunk, it throws your cut off. So make sure it's clean. It's just so easy for a piece of bark to throw it off. And this is the whole point of this video, is so you can see how you can create a mechanical advantage so you aren't giving yourself a hernia.
Well, I'd say Austin's log deck is a success.
Did this come off somewhere important?
No. And we were able to rotate this 180 degrees without using a cant hook. So our VEVOR hoist and trolley works. Thanks to Logrite too for this guy.
That thing's awesome.
Yeah, it worked well. Well, we just finished up testing out the old log rotator. The log rotator HD. HD stands for hernia deterrent. That's what the HD stands for. You like that name, Jonathan?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, thanks to George from Middlefield Custom Sawmill coming out, Austin, and John Boy.
Yep.
Catch you in the next episode.